It's time to come together to get it done so that we can truthfully say in America, no child will be left behind.
Nelson Mandela said, "Education is the most powerful weapon with which you can use to change the world." But imagine living in a world where your opportunities to change your circumstances are limited simply because of the community you grew up in. Your school is one of the worst in the nation, your peers have some of the lowest scores on standardized tests, and your educators, as well as your country's leaders, are doing little to nothing to fix any of these problems. You have no control over any of these circumstances, yet you feel every single repercussion of these hardships and can do nothing about it. These are the problems many children across the United States are facing because of America's current education system.
In ninth grade, this school, the kids read somewhere between a first and third grade reading level. They've been pushed through the system.
There have been many failed attempts to fix the public education system. The problems have created a divide between public and private education in the United States. This divide is best shown in metropolitan areas where poverty plays a significant role in the school system.
To take a look at this gap in the education system, we are going to focus on our nation's capital. Currently, according to the documentary Waiting for Superman, which looks at the failure of the American public school system, Washington, D.C. has the lowest standardized test scores within the U.S., with only 12% of 8th graders scoring proficient in reading. Parents living in Washington, D.C. have two basic choices when it comes to sending their kids to school: public or private. The public school options are free and easy, but come with a low-quality education. As a result, more and more parents are turning to private school, as there are currently over 100 private schools in the metropolitan areas of D.C. Unfortunately, the cost of these private institutions are virtually unaffordable for the average family. The cost of education is so immense that it can be compared to the average amount spent on a prison inmate, which is $33,000. This, multiplied by a 4-year prison sentence, would be $132,000. The average cost of a private school education, $8,300, multiplied by 13 for a full elementary through high school education, and it comes to $107,900. That means that there is still $24,100 left over that the student could use to go to college. According to the District of Columbia Public Schools, the school system in Washington, D.C. is comprised of 139 public schools, across which there is a 56% high school graduation rate and an 11% truancy rate. The latter statistic indicates that on any given day, an average of 11% of the students from kindergarten to 12th grade have an intentional and illegal absence from school. Reflecting the poor quality of the 139 public schools in Washington, D.C. are the stressful decisions that many families make in the wake of recent school closings. According to a report by American University Radio, when D.C. officials announced the closing of 15 public schools in early 2013, there were incredibly low levels of student re-enrollment into neighboring schools. As of August, right before the beginning of the next school year, and at the time when this report was published, only 44% of the students whose schools closed chose to find another school within the school district. Unfortunately, this is not an isolated occurrence. In 2008, when D.C. closed 23 other public schools, they lost 58% of the students attending those schools, and enrollment district-wide dropped by a startling 4,000 students.
The poor quality of education found in D.C. public schools is not only reflected in their attrition, but also in their test scores. Taslima Rahman with the U.S. Department of Education found that when comparing 8th graders worldwide, that mathematics test scores of DC students are on par with Ukrainian students, but are beaten out by students from Kazakhstan. This means that 71 school systems in the world were ahead of DC in terms of mathematics, and only 27 were below. The situation is even worse when looking at the science scores of 8th graders. Here the scores of DC students were on par with students from Bahrain and Thailand, but were beaten out by students from Chile, Iran, and again Kazakhstan. This time, only 17 school systems in the world ranked below DC and 81 ranked above. Dauntingly, these already low test scores may actually be inflated by widespread cheating. Citing an article published by Greg Topo in USA Today, a scandal involving over 190 teachers at 70 schools in DC was uncovered in January 2009 and revealed possible testing infractions. More recently, 96 schools in D.C. were flagged for suspiciously high levels of erasure, which means that answers were filled in and then erased after the fact.
As a result of these compounded problems within DC's public schools, the education provided by private institutions has been on the rise. This increase is due to the opportunities and individual attention given to each one of the students. According to the Private School Review within DC, around 20,000 students attend private school. Within these institutions, there is a 9-to-1 ratio of students to teachers, allowing for greater individual attention and educational opportunities. However, these institutions come with a heavy price. The yearly cost of admission to a private school in the Washington, D.C. school district ranges from $8,000 to $38,000. According to Defeat Poverty DC, a local organization dedicated to helping the impoverished in the region, 20% of residents in Washington, D.C. earn less than $22,000 a year. With such low incomes, how is each parent expected to afford these types of successful education systems? When tuition exceeds a family's yearly income, it creates an even greater gap between public and private school students' academic achievement. According to Paul Thomas, an associate professor at Furman University, achievement gaps in our schools are metrics reflecting the equity and opportunity gaps that exist in society.
To further examine this dilemma, we will use an average family in DC as a case study. This family is African American and makes $65,000 a year with 2 working parents, 2 children, and a house in the southwest area of Washington, D.C., which would fall into Ward 2 of the DC public school system. The family's first child is old enough to begin elementary school, but the parents must decide where to send him to school. Ward 2 is a relatively poor section of Washington, D.C., and although the average household income is $65,000, over 11% of households living in Ward 2 make less than $10,000 per year. The family's first option is to send their child to the public elementary school for Ward 2, Amadon Bowen Elementary School. Amadon Bowen has regularly underperformed on standardized tests. In 2013, only 27% of the students scored proficient or advanced in reading, and only 15% scored proficient or advanced in math. The demographics at public schools in D.C. are highly skewed. 92% of the students at Amadon Bowen are African American, and another 5% are Hispanic. Additionally, 25% of the students live below the poverty line.
The second option for the family is to send their child to a public charter school. This requires an intense application process, as well as entering into a lottery. The public charter elementary school for Ward 2 is the Shaw campus of the Center City Public Charter School System. Overall, Shaw outperformed Amadon Bowen on standardized tests, with 23% of students scoring proficient or advanced in reading, and 42% having scored proficient or advanced in math. The demographics at Shaw are similar to Amadon Bowen, 74% African American and 26% Hispanic. The third option is for the family to send their child to a private elementary school. Living in Ward 2, their closest and cheapest option is the Holy Trinity School, a Catholic elementary school in the Jesuit tradition with a 43% acceptance rate. Admission costs $12,000 if the applicant is Catholic, but an additional $5,000 must be paid if the student does not follow Catholicism. Because Holy Trinity is a private institution, the school is not required to report its test scores or to have its teachers meet certain educational qualifications as required by the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001. Also, Holy Trinity has very different demographics than the public and public charter school. 82% of the students are white, while only 10% are African American.
In Washington, D.C., this is the dilemma that many families face. Between test scores, location, cost, and personal considerations, the decision is a difficult one. For the families that choose public schooling, it often comes at the cost of the child's education. For families that choose private schooling, the decision can devastate their financial security. Without serious reform to the education system, specifically in public schools, it will be impossible to secure a quality education for a reasonable price, and until that happens, America will continue to lag behind other educational systems, leading to serious harm for future generations.